I'm Paul Sun-Hyun Lee, and I'm an Actra Toronto member. Together with my fellow artists, technicians, and craftspeople, we are 340 productions strong in Ontario.
We're fearless creators, genuine collaborators, and we're proud to be back. Our award-winning crew base is 9,000 strong and growing, and committed to being the best in the industry.
We're over 15,000 performers strong in Ontario. We're TV performers, film performers, voice and video game performers, stunt performers.
We are visual effects and animation experts, equipment suppliers, state-of-the-art studios, composers, and so much more. We are 9,000 film-friendly locations, and we're continuously expanding our 2 million square feet of studio space, ready to support projects of any size.
We are all races and cultures. We speak 200 languages. We are the world in one province.
We make any world imaginable come to life, all right here.
We are Ontario-made and internationally enjoyed entertainment like Kim's Convenience, Code 8, Workin' Moms, Letterkenny, and Murdoch Mysteries.
The Shape of Water, Mrs. America, The Handmaid's Tale, Star Trek Discovery, Schitt's Creek.
We are animation and games enjoyed by millions around the world, like Paw Patrol, Hotel Transylvania, DNA's, Assassin's Creed, and Far Cry. We produce the best in Ontario.
We are Ontario.
We are focused on safety.
And we're ready to roll.
Thanks to Ontario Creates there for that, and welcome everybody to this KFTV talk. I am Chris Evans, the locations editor for KFTV. Today we have gathered some leading production experts to discuss all that Ontario has to offer as a filming location and their experiences filming there. Before we start, a few bits of housekeeping. I will moderate a 30-minute discussion with our panelists before we open it up to questions from you, our live audience. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button in Zoom. My colleague Jackie is helping to moderate today's panel. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Right, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have US TV director Carol Banker. Over her 30-year career, Carol has become a highly sought-after television director with a wealth of credits on critically acclaimed series, including The X-Files, Designated Survivor, Glee, The Magicians, Gotham, and Titans, where she also serves currently as producing director. We also have the Ontario Film Commissioner, Justin Cutler. Justin joined Ontario Creates as Film Commissioner in 2015 and is responsible for promoting Ontario as a jurisdiction of choice for film and television production. Justin's team facilitates capacity building opportunities like studio infrastructure expansion, workforce development, and environmental sustainability. We also have the producer, writer, director, Albert Shin from Time Lapse Pictures. Albert co-founded the Toronto-based production company in 2008, which has since produced several award-winning features, including In Her Place, The Waiting Room, and The Stone Speakers. He recently co-wrote and directed Disappearance at Clifton Hill and produced the Canada-Bosnia co-production, The White Fortress. And finally, we have supervising location manager, John Rakic. John has been working as a location manager, location scout, and now as a supervising location manager for over 20 years all over Ontario, Canada. He has a wealth of experience working on features and TV series, including American Gods, The Dark Tower, Hannibal, and Apple's new series, See. So let's kick off with some questions. Can you start by telling me a bit about the current situation in Ontario at the moment in terms of COVID cases and requirements for entering the province and Canada in general? Justin, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So at the moment, the COVID cases are, very much under control across the province. We currently have around 1,800 cases a day, which is certainly high and is, quite unfortunate, but at the same time, relatively speaking, compared to other jurisdictions, relatively low and so under control. Right now, the borders are closed coming into Canada, with the exception of foreign temporary employment workers coming through the border. So people can still come in from film productions and work fluidly within the province.
Actually, once they're in, it's actually a very safe place to be, isn't it, on set at the moment?
Yes, absolutely. Just because of the rock solid health and safety protocols that the industry has put in place through consultation with government and industry and labor, film sets are some of the safest places to be in the province. With a very low incidence rate. The productions are doing a fantastic job testing on a regular basis and observing those rules. And it's not just true for Toronto, it's true for any part of the province. So if you're filming in locations, an hour or 2, 3 outside of our major production hub, you're in a very safe environment and can access locations fluidly.
Fantastic. And extending from that, so what are the specific requirements then for international productions that do come into the country and into the province looking to shoot there? What are the requirements in terms of protocols, quarantining, cast and crew, testing, logistics, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. In terms of inbound travel, there's currently a 14-day quarantine period for people entering the province. And so as part of that, there is a mandatory 3-night stay at a government-approved hotel if you're arriving by air. Then you are tested at that point and need to then quarantine for the remainder of the 14 days in a private quarantine situation if you've tested negative. It's also required to have a negative test before you travel to Ontario as well. But as you were saying earlier, once you're in, it's fairly easy to move forward. But from a regulatory point of view, there's really just a few key guidelines that need to be observed by productions. The first is that physical distancing on set is required. You're not allowed to have singers or performers of woodwind or brass instruments near each other. They have to be separated by an impermeable barrier, which doesn't affect most productions, I guess, unless you're a musical. You do have to follow our provincial health and safety guidelines that is recently instituted as law. And in a shutdown zone, so that's the most stringent protected zone if cases rise in a certain zone. In that situation in shutdown, you are limited to 50 performers in a active filming space, and those are unmasked performers. But in any other region, that is a gray zone, a red zone, orange, etc., our entire suite of kind of protection zones, there are no performer limits in those scenarios or limits on crew, provided they were following those directives from the government and from production.
So coming to the other three, I just want to find out a bit about your own experiences filming recently. John, maybe if you come in first in terms of, I know you've been working on the Apple Series C. Tell me a bit about that and your other projects you've been working on over the last few months.
Well, we were actually in the midst of filming when we shut down March 13th, 2020 for the pandemic, and then waited until it was safe to resume working. So it did become a whole different environment of, not all of a sudden there's mandatory testing between 1 and 3 times a week, depending on which one of the zones you are on cast, mandatory mask wearing, temperature checks, and a check-in with a medic at any job site you come into, physical distancing, catering changed. We were able to make it work. Most shows adjusted, not just here, but you've noticed globally as well, to this new dynamic of, keeping everybody safe. So at the end of the day, we can all go home and come back again. It had changed in the fact that our crews got larger, which was something that we all figured would be the opposite. But when you had in now health and safety officers and compliance and increasing your labor, so you're not reliant on people just coming in for a day or not, which is where you have to worry about community transmission. The crews got larger, things got bigger, but it's great that we're all back to work now and quite booming.
And you've got quite a tight turnaround on the next series, haven't you?
The show I'm on now, yes. There is a voracious desire for content now these days. Every couple of months, a new streaming service pops up. They've got to have original content people want to watch. No one wants to wait. So we are at a heavy capacity right now in this province, plugging away.
Good.
Happily.
Carol? Yeah, quite. Carol, your experiences working on Titans?
Specifically COVID-wise, you mean?
Yeah, or just generally speaking in terms of obviously getting all the crew in and sort of working on set and sticking to guidelines and everything else?
I think, it's what John just said is correct, which is our crew is larger now. We just deepen most of the departments so that a couple things. One, that if we needed to hire day players, they're already here. And 2, if somebody gets sick, if there is a positive test, we have a larger pool to pull from to not have to shut down. And we've been very lucky. We haven't really shut down. And yeah, as far as being on set goes, it's we're just used to it. We're very used to it now. I think we're very good about taking mask breaks where we come outside and get fresh air, and that's nice to do. We no longer break for lunch, which I personally hope we never go back to. I think it's great for momentum. I love it. We do rolling lunches. And most people I talk to appreciate that. When I'm directing, I really don't break, but it doesn't bother me. But I think the thing that we've had difficulty with is sort of air quality. We have one part of our COVID team test the air quality on set, and we have to leave set if it gets to a certain number. And that was a kind of unexpected thing that slows us down, because we have to wait till the numbers go back up. So it's like a fire drill in a way. You clear, you come outside, and we just wait until they tell us we can go back. But other than that, I think he's right that Ontario is to capacity. It's actually very difficult to find people if we need people. We just needed some additional prop help, and we brought somebody in from Montreal because there's just nobody. It's very tapped out from my perspective. These guys might say differently, but when we've tried to hire people, it's pretty tapped out here.
I have to ask, why did you choose Ontario in the first place as a shooting location? What was it that appealed to you about that?
Well, I have to admit, I was not the producing director on season 1 when that decision was made. So I can't really speak to why they did it, except that I think that for tax incentive purposes, it's a good place to come. And also, I think that it has a lot of looks going for it. It's with the exception of the CN Tower, I think you can have which we erase or we frame out. There's skylines here that don't just read Toronto. Season 1, it was kind of a road show, and it played for Detroit, and it played for a few places. Last season, it was set in San Francisco, and we played it for San Francisco. And this season, it's set in Gotham, and it's great for Gotham. And I'm sure we'll get to it, but there's another city near here called Hamilton that is a big place where we shoot, and it's great for Gotham. So the look is great. And as much as everybody doesn't like shooting here in the winter, I think it's really cinematic and beautiful. So I love shooting here in the winter.
I think Carol raised some interesting points there. I think one of them in particular about the fact that Ontario does double for the US in a lot of shows, doesn't it, Justin? That's been the case for several projects.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, doubles well for the US and other locations worldwide. I think that a lot of folks in the industry come up for the Toronto Film Festival, and they see downtown Toronto, which can obviously double for any big American city. But beyond that, when you just drive half an hour outside of the city, you can get great American Midwest looks, prairie looks. There's some great small towns. I mean, if you think about both chapters of It filmed in a town called Port Hope, and that was, like the perfect small town American look. And then if you go up north to Northern Ontario, where there's also a very strong domestic film industry, you can get, forest looks, mountainous regions, dedicated snow, which for some productions really is quite required. If you're making big budget decisions around weather, we can deliver that over the winter months. And what's great about that also is that there's infrastructure in all of those places. Not every place will have a lot of crew, but there's a great film office in each one of those regions that understands the film guidelines and how to welcome productions to their community. So I think that kind of plays well as an advantage for producers.
Fantastic. Albert, do you want to come in there in terms of your experiences filming like the White Fortress?
Sure. So the White Fortress was actually shot in Bosnia. However, we did all our post in Ontario, and so I can speak a little bit towards that. Especially, all the post was pretty much done during COVID as well, and I can just speak to sort of the post facilities here in terms of facilitating, picture, but also sound. All our actors were in Europe and having to coordinate, additional photography or ADR and anything else. And, the facilities here are pretty top notch. And I think because we're so used to sort of working with producers in LA or anything else anyway. Just, it was very, very much, there wasn't really much of a learning curve instead of kind of continuing the machine and being able to kind of make deadlines and make people feel comfortable. Because obviously when, when you're trying to mix virtually or you're trying to, direct ADR virtually, it's done. I mean, it was done before COVID, but, just especially in the feature film space, it really wasn't. And so there was a bit of a worry there, but, it actually turned out to be really great because, everybody was all over the place. And for a small budget film like ours, we were actually able to save quite a bit of money and still get the result that we wanted.
Fantastic. And John, how have your experiences been in terms of pre and during COVID and dealing with international producers looking to come and work here in the studios? I mean, what's your relationship been like with them and what requirements have they had pre and during?
I mean, it hasn't changed too much from pre to prior. I mean, it was just an adaptation of the policies, which didn't really change fundamentally, how we film. It's changed to things like, scouting. We don't go all in a big vehicle anymore. A lot of it's done digitally or remotely, or in the case of the Showman, we do a lot of self-driving. The great thing about this industry is it's designed to adapt. It adapts always from its conception, from when sound came into color and even this, we'll always adapt and figure out a way forward. But to pivot back to what Justin said, I mean, like producers come up here because you get a plethora of looks. In Toronto alone, which is what the 5th largest city in North America, you drive 10 minutes in any direction and the city changes architecturally, look-wise. So it's helpful to shows that are coming up here to not just get one look, but to get a multiple of them. I mean, we do Northeast very well, but we can do San Francisco. We've done, the beaches of Normandy. We've done a little bit of everything.
And Carol, have you mixed up locations with sets, with studio stuff as well?
We do, yeah. We're relatively heavy location show. I like being on location, way prefer it to being on set. And yeah, we do. And we've been in the same, we're in proper stage space here that we've been in all 3 seasons. And it's great. It's very handy. And a thing that I should have actually mentioned with COVID that has changed, and it's certainly changed with how we film and location scout and stuff, is that we don't do company moves in the middle of a shoot day. So all we can do is what you call a cart push. And so you just like most things, sometimes it makes you be more creative and come up with better, interesting ideas to solve that. But it also sometimes creates on your schedule a day that is just not a full day because there's nothing else to do in that day. You just can't, so scheduling, I think, is a bigger challenge because of that. But it's a relatively small thing. And I actually prefer it because I don't like moving to me is time I could be shooting. So I don't like doing company moves. So it's kind of a gift in a way.
And Albert, I know you've worked on projects a lot in the region. So tell me a bit about some of your experiences in terms of doubling for the locations and what it's been like filming around Ontario.
Well, I mean, just to sort of reinforce what everybody else has said, absolutely. There's all sorts of looks, but the last film that I directed was a film that takes place specifically in Niagara Falls. And for people that don't, obviously, I'm sure everybody knows about the falls, but there's also sort of the city that goes along with it, and it's a sort of a very unique location, and it's sort of outside of what they call the zone. So it's a bit of a it's an hour and a half outside the city or whatever. Yet we had access to like a city that just you can't really find anywhere else, and so even when you're looking for something hyper specific, I think Ontario has a lot to offer just in terms of not just doubling for something or just not for doubling something, but if you're looking for something very, very specific, in my case, it was it has that going for it as well. So obviously depending on what you're looking for, but it is quite robust. And I think it sort of speaks to the amount of, everybody was saying how booked up everything is. And I think it just sort of speaks to the, how robust the industry is here top to bottom in terms of locations, but also the support and the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, the province has proven very popular, hasn't it, Justin? I mean, some great projects have been filming there recently. the likes of Nightmare Alley, It Too, Handmaid's Tale, Schitt's Creek, Anne with an E, and the list goes on. There's some fantastic projects that have been filming there. So what is it you think that sort of appeals so much about the province and why they choose to shoot, in Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 5 reasons, and I think Carol touched on one of the most important, which is the financial incentives. Our incentives are quite competitive and, more importantly, stable, so that producers can really bank on our incentives being there when they need it. Our service production tax credit is valued at 21.5% for production expenditures and labor. And there is no annual cap or sunset clause on that. Is also a refund and not a buyback, which makes it a lot easier for producers to process. That's combined with other competitive incentives like our federal tax credit, which can be stacked on top of the provincial tax credit, which is valued at an additional 16% of labor, and a computer animation and special effects tax credit at 18% for your Ontario labor as well. So when you add all of that up, it makes a fantastic financial incentive. And then beyond locations, I think the talent is another big thing. You don't have to bring in crew from around the world. You can bring in some key executives and really host your entire production using domestic labor, which again, for at least for the Canadian tax credit, is eligible expenditures for our program. So those are some important reasons. But beyond that, I would say the infrastructure is another big piece. We've got about just over 3 million square feet of stage space, and we're about to increase that by another 600,000 square feet this year. So that should help us keep up with that demand. And then beyond that, our equipment suppliers can deliver anywhere in the province. They've got cutting edge equipment. I think something that Albert mentioned as well is just this idea that we're very connected with other production hubs through high bandwidth internet connections and fiber optic cable, which really helps that remote work go smoothly as well. So when you add all of that up with the support of government, and maybe John can speak to this as well, but a supportive public, you can really get into some really hard to access locations, which helps the production go a lot easier.
Fantastic. John, do you want to elaborate a little further on why the province is proving so popular?
I mean, again, it's been covered, but from a location standpoint, it's that we offer a multitude of looks and an established, experienced workforce that we are trying to grow as fast as we can to match the need. The equipment's here, but the looks are here. I mean, it's very few times where we have to come back and say we just don't have it, unless it's something specifically unique. Like you're looking for an aircraft carrier. Well, obviously we don't have those, but it's fun. It's challenging sometimes to try to find what's being looked for, but we never had a problem. Most municipalities have a film office that's eager to help. Most people are more than willing to be interested in entertaining, having someone come by. There are some that don't, but right now, these days, with coming out of a pandemic, a lot of businesses are happy to have us come back because we're a great source of much needed revenue. I mean, currently, quite a few shows have turned some of our convention centers into makeshift stages, which has been a great shot in the arm for everybody.
Yeah, actually, and just to add to that, over the last, I think about 8 months, we've had over 14,000 images provided to us for our locations library, which really just shows you how many people do really want filming on their properties and aren't afraid to do that. And it's based on the health and safety protocols. People are hearing through word of mouth that the industry is safe and can operate smoothly. So they want to be part of that. I should mention also that, if producers are interested in filming in the province, our team at the Film Commission will do all the complimentary location scouting and consulting for productions, which again makes it a little easier for producers to be in the province and work here.
Fantastic. And Carol, I mean, how important are local fixers and producers and production service providers when filming in the province?
Oh, super important. I mean, even though I've been here a long time, I think that, people help me with just being goodwill ambassadors, basically, but something that John said is really true. And I'm sort of comparing it to LA, that people are much more film friendly here. People are really, it is very, very rare. In fact, I can't think of an instance when we've had difficulty with neighbors or any of that stuff here. And I also, you know, chalk it up to our locations department that they do their due diligence and make sure that we're going to be welcomed and all of that stuff. But that makes a big difference of, you know, unfortunately, if you shoot in LA, the person next door will decide to mow their lawn until you give them money. It's like, that's the kind of thing that is very common there because they're just tired of productions coming in. But I think that people here are very, you know, it's a business here that they appreciate. You know, it's a big industry here. And he's also very correct about the talent. The crews here are really talented, very, very talented, really strong filmmakers.
And is it, I mean, obviously you talk about, you know, filming in various places. Is it easy to get permits to shoot in these locations as well, Justin? And John, do you want to come in there? Justin, maybe first?
Yeah, sure. So we've got a network of about 80 regional and municipal film offices across the province, and each one of them is trained and understands the needs of the industry, and they've really endeavored to have consistent guidelines between regions, so that you're not guessing as a producer when you move from place to place what the new policies are going to be. But that network has made permits really easy to access, and even throughout COVID, I think we've only had one very small region not accept permits throughout the entire period. So far so good on that level.
Yeah, it's just echo on that. It's really easy. Everyone's kind of gotten on board. One of the funny things coming out of this is a lot of the jurisdictions are trying to standardize their paperwork, so it's consistent when you go from municipality to municipality. But they're all willing to be partners in this all. It's very few times where you have any issues. You know, sometimes we have, especially on television, you have tight turnarounds, and they are willing to accommodate, especially these days where things are getting, you know, what we're shooting on screen is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're producing feature level quality, especially on television these days. And that takes a lot of effort and everyone involved. So it's great that you have a partner in the municipalities as well.
And finally, how do you see the production landscape changing in the coming months? Obviously, we still have COVID, but how do you see things sort of developing and sort of changing by the end of the year, perhaps? Do you want to start off, John, and then we'll move around?
I see the levels staying consistent or rising. I don't think anything's going to be dropping off anytime soon. Content is needed. I mean, we've watched the rise of streaming services and people, you know, especially in COVID, just absorbing all that content. We, you know, every other couple of months, a new service is out there who wants original programming. So there's a need for content. And as long as there is, we'll all be busy.
Justin?
Yeah, no, I agree with John. I think the production levels are going to be really high this year. We ended up having a record-breaking fall when we returned from COVID, and that demand has not decreased. But I will say, you know, as we are talking about things being very busy at the moment, you know, we definitely still have stage space availability, crew availability later in the year. So that's, you know, we don't want people to write us off completely. But at the same time, what we're trying to do though is be very realistic with producers. So our team endeavors to get as much information from producers as possible to set realistic expectations. The last thing we want to do is overpromise to a producer that they can do what they want to do and fail at that. So I think that having more stage space come online is going to really help with that. And you know, our entire industry, from government partners to our industry stakeholders, are thinking about workforce development right now quite seriously. You know, not just getting people into the ranks, but also elevating people through mid-career to the higher levels of their career, and thinking about that from a diverse and inclusive lens too. So we're doing a lot of work on that front, which should help us grow our capacity for future years.
Just quickly on the stage construction point, what's, you know, where are we at with that in terms of new studios being built across the province?
So we currently have about 3.2 million square feet. We've got an additional 600,000 square feet coming online this year across 5 facilities. And we're expecting that to increase over 1 million square feet in 2 years across a number of other facilities that are currently under development. So, so a lot, and some of it is purpose built, and others are high quality conversions.
Fantastic. Albert, do you want to come in there in terms of your thoughts on the landscape?
Well, I mean, I'll just speak from, I guess, the indie kind of feature film space, which is, you know, we just went through, you know, an international co-production, which, you know, was, you know, when I was coming up, it was always like, you know, these co-productions have to be $15 million or over for it to be worth your while. And, you know, we just did a co-production that was under $2 million, and it was very, very advantageous for us. I mean, it was the only way for us to get it done. And so I just think that, you know, there is an opportunity for independent film producers to partner with producers in Ontario who are very, very experienced in putting these projects and packaging these projects together, which is obviously a little bit different than just a domestic project. But it just, I think, opens up avenues, and it just opens up the landscape. And I think, you know, especially nowadays where the world is getting much smaller, I think it's sort of the next evolution in all these kind of producers, especially independent producers in Ontario, that are really, really looking to partner with people abroad and kind of broaden the scope of storytelling. So you know, I think that's very, very much what we're looking for.
Okay. And finally, Carol, before we turn to questions from the audience.
Well, I'm not sure if I have much to add to that particular question, but something that I did want to add about shooting in Ontario that especially I've discovered during COVID is I find that the casting gene pool is much deeper. When I've cast roles this year, I get multiple interesting people that I'm choosing from. And one guy who I cast this season, I had a conversation with him, and he was saying he's born and raised in Ontario, or in Toronto, and has been working in the States for forever. And when COVID shut things down, he came home and he ended up staying here because he was just getting tons and tons of work, and he didn't have to go back and forth, and he didn't have to quarantine and all this. So I think that there's been actors who have worked elsewhere who have come back here to live, and I don't know how long that will go on or whatever, but it's significantly different than last season, and it in a great way, I think. Like, it's
that is a good. That's fantastic. All right, well, let's go to some questions from the audience then. We've got one here from Daniel Aboud, who says, aside from script requirements and financial considerations, what other factors govern in what city a project is produced? Is there any one person or people that have the final say in that regard? Justin, do you want to come in on that?
It's a great question. There really aren't any regulatory bodies that define which project can shoot where, and there's certainly no censorship laws in Ontario. So it's pretty much free reign in terms of the content, as long as you're on side with the law.
Anyone else want to come in on that question, or we covered it? Good. Okay. Yeah. There's another question here from Amy Phelan. Our town is excited by the idea of hosting productions here in Meaford and throughout the area. We would like some tips about how to create that kind of business here. So I think it's basically sort of tips on what to do for your area, for your sort of province.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can cover that. First of all, we're happy to meet with anyone across the province to talk about those opportunities. As a film commission, we do that with every region. We have local town hall meetings on a weekly basis with all of our regions to talk about filming best practices. If you're really interested in building an industry outside of kind of known areas, then I would suggest that you really increase the number of locations and kind of high value locations to offer the film industry. And also, it's always a great idea to bring location managers out for a familiarization tour before they get into production, so that they can get comfortable with the region and comfortable with you as government representatives.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. There's another question which I think you can answer also, Justin. Is, do foreign producers entering Canada need to do the 14-day quarantine even with the multiple COVID tests?
They do, yeah.
Simple, there you go.
Yeah, there's virtually no exemption from that.
There is, okay, right. So Terence Cardos asks, can you advise the way forward for film tourism in Ontario? For example, besides the normal subsidy, what additional support can we get from the local tourism board, for example?
That's another great question. So that's something that we are thinking about right now. There have been a few regions that have really worked on their film tourism, like Durham region, who hosted Hannibal, and they have an annual Hannibal Fest and bring people to locations. And there's a lot of great strategies you can use to build out that strategy. But I don't have information on hand about which funds are available, but it's something we can look into.
Brilliant. There's a good question here for all of you, actually. Are there some great, sort of lesser known but unusually interesting location sites in the province that perhaps you filmed at on your projects that you could talk about? John, do you want to come in there first?
I could spend about a couple of days going through that one.
Perfect.
It really depends on what you're looking for. Every project is a little different, so it's also perspective is what would be unique or different. On the show I'm on currently, we found a shipyard that's actually dismantling ships. So we were able to walk by, and it's a giant laker that's being torn apart piece by piece. So it kind of dwarfs you when you're standing next to something that's 20 stories tall,
wow.
just sitting on land. The Ontario has a plethora of looks, waterfalls to limestone cliffs to flat fields. We're geographically very lucky if you're willing to travel, which some productions aren't, and you can put me in a car with someone. I'm sure I could show them things they haven't seen before, and they'll, within a day's drive, not a couple of hours, I could, just in Toronto alone. It's really hard to say that because there's so much here.
Are there lots of alternative locations, like alternative studio spaces, for example, that people can use, whether it be, I don't know, like an old airport or a bus shelter or a warehouse or a factory that can be converted quite easily in the province for projects? John, sorry, just to elaborate a bit further on what you were saying.
Yeah, there are actually. I mean, we're slowly converting. Some of our stakeholders are doing conversions, but there's some vacancy in real estate where if you're willing to put in a little bit of sweat equity, you can convert it into a temporary stage.
Fantastic. Carol, do you want to come in there in terms of the locations you've been filming at, some of the more unusual ones, perhaps?
Yeah, for one thing, if you haven't been here, what you may or may not know is that the Great Lakes are in fact great. That you cannot see across it. It looks like an ocean. It reads like an ocean. In addition to that, there are small lakes around. There's that kind of thing. There's really, really great, especially for our show and for genre shows, there's great industrial spaces that are just, even sometimes when we don't shoot there, I love walking through them. They're just crazy and wacky and super interesting looking. And every time one goes away because they're building condos, it makes me sad. I'm like, oh God, just keep some of these crazy old places. A place that we were talking about before we came online is a place called Stelco, which, to be perfectly honest, I don't even know exactly what it used to be. It's some kind of big giant power thing. Is that what it was?
A steel mill.
Old steel plant.
It was a steel mill. It was actually Stelco Steel. US Steel then took over for a while. There's still some active stuff going on. They still do make coke, but Hamilton was our steel town. It was our Pittsburgh. So there's still some active steel mills down there.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example of, like, Hamilton is a very industrial looking town and Toronto is very European. For somebody coming from LA, it feels very European. So every neighborhood has a small market, has a small butcher and all that stuff. So you can get those kind of various feels quite easily here, even though they're not unusual. They're sort of ready to go.
Fantastic. And Albert, do you want to come in there as well with some of the locations that you filmed at?
Well, I guess I'll just reiterate, Niagara Falls. I just shot there a couple of years ago for my last feature, and it's very much, a one-of-a-kind kind of place. And obviously, it probably doesn't work for everything, but I think, like I said before, just if you're willing to look, there is specificity as well, not just sort of broad stroke things. So it's yeah.
And was it straightforward to shoot there at the falls?
There was a lot of components to shooting there because it's obviously a very big tourist town, so there was a lot of places that we wanted access to that was very specific and very highly sort of regulated, that they were very, very open to us filming, and it was just sort of a permit and permission process. And it was also the locals themselves. You know, we got into some very specific kind of locations and diners and things like that that are very kind of like Niagara Falls lore. And yeah, it was actually very kind of a smooth process.
Even the falls themselves, they have a wonderful parks commission that runs the whole gamut. And I've actually shot adjacent to the falls. And one of the unique things is they have the remnants of an old Westinghouse power plant, part of the original system that Tesla helped design, that you can actually go film inside of.
Wow.
Chris, I have one other thing actually that's Toronto is that there's a lot of really great graffiti here, that a lot of places, beautiful stuff, and a lot of places you have to get permission from the artist, right? Whose work it is. And I've had so many problems in other cities where we cannot get the permission, and we often, almost always, get the permission here from the artist. So you don't have to cover up this great looking urban sort of thing. It's just right there and ready to go.
Fantastic. Sounds great. Right, let's go to another question. We've got one here from Bruce Tennell, who says, how have each of you managed the COVID compliance piece? I know you've touched on it before, but have you simply added it to your existing health and safety portfolio, or has it been dealt with in a completely different department? John, you're sort of nodding your head there. Do you want to sort of go?
Yeah, in most cases, it's a completely different department. We have our provincial guidelines through our Section 21 health and safety component that we all helped put together, but we all have our individual, the actual studios that we work for have their own policies. And in almost every case, it's a completely separate department that was created to deal with COVID compliance, which has been great. That's their job. That's all they have to do. It's not parceled out to somebody else's already full workload.
Carol, do you want to come in there?
Well, we happen to have a really good COVID team here, and it took a little bit of finessing to get to where we're at, but it's nice to have somebody who keeps us from having to self-police. So it's just their job to do, and our team, I think, is very, very good about doing it kind of gently reminding us without sort of wagging their finger at us, to just, because filmmaking is collaborative. We're very used to sort of being right next to each other and all of that stuff, and even scouting. And they're very good about just reminding us to, be a part and stuff like that. And I agree with John that it's nice that it's its own department and they kind of deal with that stuff and we comply.
And you have to keep in mind, here in every jurisdiction, these are departments that didn't exist. We didn't just pick up a phone and call. We had to create them from scratch in a very quick time, from when most of us were allowed to come back to work to when we were rolling. It was again proves that this industry is great at adapting to things, that we created this whole new protocol system within weeks, and it's been working perfect.
So is it sometimes a combination, though, of the sort of province's requirements with the production's own specifications and requirements? Do you find that's often a mix of the two?
It's also studio requirements. Like we test more than I think other shows here, because it's partly Warner Brothers protocols.
Yeah, they were designed to stack on to one another in a harmonious way. There's no conflict with them. It's intentionally, when everyone spent the time putting them together, it was that one kind of laid on top of the other. And it's very consistent with what other jurisdictions currently. Yeah. And the studios, I mean, again, we've had no problems, which has been great.
Justin, you want to come in there? Yeah.
Yeah, I would just add, when we were designing those health and safety guidelines, the committee that does that is not just representative of Ontario producers and unions. It includes all of the studios and labor representatives from the United States, so that we could have that harmonious launch. And our guidelines were one of the first sets of guidelines to be established within Canada, and so they've now been adopted in other regions as well. But it was very much a collaborative effort to make sure that those were agreed upon by everyone before we started up.
And have you found generally the crew have been quite receptive to these requirements, like no sort of backlash or issues on set or anything? John, you're shaking your head no?
No, I mean, we all got used to it. This is what we had to do to get back to work, to get food on the table, to do what we do. So some people might have had some issues in the beginning, but you learn to adapt. There's no complaints now. You do know you have to wear a mask on set. You do know you have to get your temperature checked when you come to work. You've got to get a nasal swab, depending on your show's protocols, and we've gotten used to it.
Brilliant. Okay. There's another question here. Are there location and crew libraries available anywhere? Justin, I imagine you can probably answer that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Our Ontario Film Commission website has a location library that you can access as a public user, but that it hosts about 9,000 locations, about 350,000 images from locations across the province. And if you need help building that image package, then our team comes on board, and we can take a script, a lookbook, or a treatment from you, and use a locations manager from the Directors Guild of Canada's Ontario chapter to build that up for you within about 3 days. So feel free to reach out to us for that assistance. And Chris, going back to what you were saying earlier, like how we're embedding these health and safety guidelines and new models into our communication tools. We have a COVID response page on our website. And you can access that by going to OntarioReadyToRoll.ca, and it has all of the current guidelines and regulatory requirements.
Fantastic. There's another question here from Amy Phelan, who asks, as a town beginning to open its doors to film production, is it a good idea to invite an investor for building conversion to sound stages? John or Justin, maybe? Do you want to comment on that one? Or Albert, if you wanted to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that before you, I think, go down the road too far of thinking about what spaces might work, we do have a few documents that can help you understand what specs are required for those spaces and how conversions could work, and some of the costing models for that. So feel free to reach out to us maybe before reaching out to real estate brokers or developers or operators. But we can also put you in contact with those folks as well.
Fantastic. Actually, Albert, there's a good question here for you. There's someone asking about co-productions and how there have been lots of them, and how do they work in practice between Canada and other countries. I know obviously you mentioned before about your project with Bosnia-Herzegovina. Do you want to talk a bit about that perhaps and how that's worked in practice?
Sure. So just on the Canadian side of things, Canada has, I think, probably one of the most number of kind of treated co-productions with any country in the world. I think we have, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's like, it's a lot. It's like dozens and dozens of just about every country. So every treaty has sort of its own kind of rules and regulations, but from the Canadian side of things, there's a co-production office that we work in tandem with, just in terms of making sure we partner with the right producer in whatever country that we're looking at. And it really becomes, the two countries kind of creating a dialogue and a channel of communication to be able to put the co-production together. So for us, because of the Canadian side, we do so many co-productions, it's actually a very open and line of communication. And then for us, we were doing a co-production with Bosnia, which, Canada has never done a co-production with Bosnia. So there was a little bit of a learn curve. And I think and there was, so behind the scenes, there was a lot of sort of things that we had to get straight on the Bosnian side, just to comply with the Canadian side and vice versa. But I think because we had such an experienced co-production office here in Canada, they were able to kind of work through the problems and kind of bring the Bosnian side up to speed. And it was actually a very kind of smooth collaboration because of that. And I think if it was not that, there was a nightmare scenario that we were looking at, which was, just trying to, the language barrier, the time barrier, there's all sorts of things, the two different sets of lawyers, two different sort of protocols, two different sorts of everything. And it is a lot to kind of go through, especially if you haven't before. And so I think having a very experienced co-production office, which Canada does have, that any producer can connect with, like any Canadian producer can connect with, it was very, very helpful. And I think it blended itself well for us, and I think for any future productions.
Fantastic. Carol, do you want to come in there in terms of your experience as a US director and producer coming into Canada and shooting and working with local producers?
Sure. One thing is that just the difficulty now of coming in and having to quarantine and stuff, we're block shooting and shooting more episodes at a time in order to keep it down. But so we're having less people kind of come in and relying more on, potentially hiring Canadian directors and stuff like that. But the producers here, they know so much stuff that I don't know. So I rely on them so much. You know, I'm the creative producer, so I'm like always learning about, like I've learned a lot on this Zoom, as a matter of fact. But yeah, the producers here, they're local. They just, you know, even like I'm thinking of locations, like they just always have something in the back of their mind because they know the area so well and stuff like that. It's something that when you're a guest, you sort of take for granted when you're at home. Like I feel that way when I'm in Los Angeles, but when I come here and we're trying to problem solve something, they kind of know how to do it. I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
no, it does. It's interesting. It's really interesting. And John, I was going to ask you actually also, having worked with obviously the streaming giants and studios and whatnot, how have your experiences differed depending on the production company involved? Like, is it dramatically different in the way they work and the requirements and how they shoot and everything else?
I mean, not too much. I mean, things have changed over the last few years, and you know, digital becoming more popular and large format cameras requiring bigger, more expensive sets. But everyone seems to follow the same standard. I mean, there hasn't been a radical shift in time. It's just we follow the trends that everyone globally is following, especially, you know, our friends to the south and the studio system and what their expectations are with green screen and drones and equipment. And that's all stuff that we're able to do up here.
Fantastic. There's one more question here. So actually, this is to you, Albert, following up. Is the co-production office you mentioned a film commission department?
No, it's actually through Telefilm Canada. So I don't, Justin, you can speak to, like, I don't guess you don't have any sort of overlap with the co-production office, do you?
Not directly, it's a federal agency, but but we work very closely because there is an Ontario Film Fund, and we, you know, do try to harmonize funds when possible and such. But I think everything you said, Albert, kind of covered it. Like they've got a great office. I think they have 52 co-production treaties with countries worldwide, and it's they're quite experienced.
Yeah, they're very experienced. So the way to access it would generally be, you know, through, you know, we found our partners, all our potential co-production partners, you know, through markets and things when people still got together before pre-COVID, you know, at EFM or Cannes or AFM and things like that, where you get to meet sort of international producers and people trying to put projects together that may be a potential fit with Ontario or with Canada. And so that's how this one came about that we did. And hopefully those kinds of opportunities, I mean, I'm sure they're happening virtually right now, but once hopefully we're past this pandemic, I'm sure there'll be, hopefully there are a plethora of projects that could use Ontario's potential partnership.
Fantastic. And finally, do you see production levels increasing back up to the same sort of level as before pre-COVID? Justin, are you getting a lot of interest from international producers calling up and looking to shoot in the province?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're actually already back up to our regular volume and exceeding that for the winter season. So we're expecting a busy 2021.
John, that must be the case for you too, right? You're getting a lot of phone calls from people wanting to work in the province.
The volume, if you were to look at the calendar, you'd think it was summer based on how busy it is right now. So it's going to be another busy year.
Brilliant. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, guys. Thanks to our speakers and the sponsor, Ontario Creates, and of course, you guys for watching at home. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.